This is an open letter to Mr. Biden. Uh, Sorry to take your time, sir. This is my first letter to you. I see a few issues that I think I have a solution for. I see those issues. I'm sure you see those issues. And it's been in the news a lot, those issues. So I'm going to read them out. And I'm going to give you my solution for it. But then, who am I? I'm a nobody, from nowhere. So it doesn't matter whose idea it is. What matters is whether it will work. Whether it will help the situation. And based on whether the idea would help the situation, you probably can set up a group, and then act upon whatever the study group, non-biased study group, puts together. If you act upon that, then if it works, good for everybody. So to cut the matter short, here's what I see and everybody sees around. There is a lack of social cohesiveness. That's a lot of people from a lot of sides are very ungrateful for the stability that Uncle Sam has been able to put together. So to keep this stability, you need grateful people, and to have grateful people, to keep the stability, you need social cohesiveness, and to achieve social cohesiveness, you need grateful people. At the moment, many from many sides are ungrateful, and they don't see that the stability that the system has put together is worth a lot. So as of right now, lack of social cohesiveness is evident. There is the inflation of money. It's obviously there is some there. Now we can there is a disagreement on how much, but it's noticeable. Then there is this idea that the population is very warlike. The paranoia is taking over, whether domestic war, foreign war. Education, unfortunately, because commerce has been involved too much with the education system, education has become very expensive for Uncle Sam's children. So what happens is these commercial interests have made education very, very expensive, and so many do not have a very good, do not get to learn what is needed for is needed to be a productive member of the society. Many are not taught the right skills because the system is commerce driven, and if a lot of issues comes up when anything is commerce driven, and so there is an education issue, lack of usable knowledge issue. Then there is the media misinformation. Unfortunately, the media, we all know, that has become too much of a pet of power. So instead of confronting power, media has become a pet. You can very, very cute, gorgeous, in short skirts, pet of the power. Unfortunately, so it's a lot of that going on, and it's not from the lack of interest in the media. It shows that even the media is struggling to keep up with Facebook. That means there is a lack of trust that one usually puts in intellectuals, because in the media intellectuals are unwelcomed. So people with logic and reason are mostly unwelcome. There are only very biased people are welcome. So that's a side. That's a side. But still, there is a lot of lack of trust in the media. And there is, in general, motivation has become an issue. Motivation of young people, motivation of older people. So these are the things, the main things that I have noticed from paying attention to the media, my surroundings, social media. There is what's happening, what is. Not in general, Mr. Biden. Nothing specific in the United States, but planet-wise, but mostly very noticeable where I'm living, because thank God that I'm here living in the United States. But I see these noticeable things, and I have a solution. Again, I'm a nobody from nowhere. You can set up a study group. But I think this is a solution that can solve a lot of these problems, all of these problems. And I will go over it for you, sir. I'm sorry I'm taking a little bit of your time. The matter of the solution is tourism as a Marshall Plan. Tourism as a Marshall Plan. What am I saying is basically incentivizing Americans to spend a few years abroad, not in America, abroad. And incentivizing means that basically people are recruited, volunteers who wants to go and live wherever you want, wherever that they don't speak English. We pay you whatever stimulus check or universal basic income, whatever we were going to pay you to live in America, because lack of jobs and there's inflation issue. Instead of us paying you to live in America, we pay you to go live in Uganda, or go live in Brazil, or go live in Spain. Here is a check, and basically you give the same check to everyone, just like you pay the same check to citizen soldiers, you pay the same check to citizen tourists. Kind of like that. I would call it a Marshall Plan of tourism. How would this help? Well, I can go over it. For example, lack of social cohesiveness because of the perspective, the ungratefulness that some may feel towards this actually works well for the conservatives member of the society. Many conservative members of the society are concerned that not many people are grateful for what they have, and they should be grateful for what they have. Well, this traveling and going and living, for example, in Uganda, in Chad, in Algeria, in Namibia for 3 years, for anybody from any of the industrial states, going and living in a very different environment with very limited resources, with very limited social cohesiveness, with very limited material goods, it will make people more grateful for what they have back home. So after let's say a stint of 3 years, you say anybody picking up this idea, volunteering for this would take 3 years, has 3 years. We pay for 3 years. So within that 3 years, and after that, when the citizen comes back home to either the United States or even industrial European countries, many of them are actually doing this. They're not incentivizing as such. To a degree they are. Scandinavian countries specifically are doing this. You have a lot of Scandinavian tourists around the world at any given time. So somehow they have been able to put a system together which incentivizes their citizens to go and, you know, research the world on their own. You can call it research, social project, social research. Why can't, you know, average citizen, you know, become social researchers, spending 3 years somewhere other than where they were born? And if they were born in a very good place, you know, with a lot of guaranteed securities and stabilities, you know, a lot of social guarantees. When they spend some time in a place that they hasn't been, doesn't have as many social guarantees, they will become very grateful of what they have, whether what they have is in Germany or what they have is in Sweden or what they have is in Madrid or what they have is in, you know, Baltimore. So my point is this: social cohesiveness will go up, will become much better because you have much more grateful citizens because they have seen the shit. So they're grateful for what they have. They become grateful for what they have. So that takes care of social cohesiveness. Inflation of money. When you know this, you know, dollar debt system is, you know, you have to continuously inject it with cash, with money, to continue this dollar debt system, because, you know, every once in a while a lot of bankruptcies just happens because, you know, there is a dollar debt system and nobody's printing the interest. So, you know, there is a, you know, musical chair that many have to get out because they don't have enough to pay their debt. So we know that, you know, Uncle Sam has to continuously print money. So why not just, you know, when you give most of this money, you know, some of this money, not most of this money, some of this money to these tourists to spend in shitholes of the world, that somehow, you know, alleviates a lot of pain over there and alleviates a lot of inflation over here. You see, you're hitting two targets with one arrow. You're alleviating a lot of pain on the other side of the world in those shitholes that, you know, volunteers decide to go, and you're alleviating because where do these volunteers, for example, eat out? A lot of time they eat out at, you know, very humble places in very humble cities in, let's say, Thailand, in Vietnam, in Chad, in Uganda. So they probably find their favorite spots, you know, some shabby spot with you know, but who sells very, you know, good food at a very cheap price. So you're directly stimulating the shitholes of this world, which is always a good idea. If you can directly stimulate a very, you know, a food stall, you know, if you can directly stimulate the economy of a food stall in downtown Bangkok, and directly stimulate that, and so that guy has an income to put, you know, to teach his children, you know, right from wrong, then the whole, you know, the whole planet benefits. And on top of that, that money is still going to end up here. Don't worry about that, because that's food stall guy who takes that money and gives that, you know, American citizen that dinner at a very cheap price. That same you know, food seller, he's gonna go see Brad Pitt's latest movie, and with that purchase of that ticket, he's putting money back into, you know, back into US, because Brad Pitt is getting a cut of that money that food seller in Bangkok has, you know, spent to go and watch his movie. So my point is this, my conservative friends, you're not going to be losing much, because US corporations own a lot of the world, and a lot of the money that the people of the world who are beneficiaries of this tax money, a lot of that money is going, much of that money is going to come back into US corporations' coffers, which directs it back to U.S. economy. So it's a win-win. You're just throwing the money a little farther out, and before that money comes back, it influences a lot more economies. It does a lot more good. You see what I'm saying? When you drop the dollar right underneath you, okay, there's a chance going to be an inflation. But when you give this money to your own citizen and you send that citizen way down, way farther, before that money makes it back to you, is going to feed a few people. It's going to go back to Brad Pitt's pocket, but still, at least it's going to rejuvenate a lot of economies around the world before it reaches Brad Pitt's pocket, or GE's pocket, or Tesla's pocket, or GM's pocket, or Ford's pocket, or Coca-Cola's pocket. I mean, a prime example is Coca-Cola. The money that you give to your tourists that to go and spend in Hong Kong, in Bangkok, in Nigeria, that money, the same day that salesman who has just wrapped up his dinner, gave us his dinner at the cheap price, is going to buy Coca-Cola with that. So it goes, it only takes 2 steps before it is back into, U.S. corporations. So you shouldn't, my conservative friend, you shouldn't be concerned about, this money is not helping us directly. Yes, eventually it will end up with us, but it will help a lot of other people. You can say you have done a lot of good. So the matter of inflation is solved. So the money just doesn't go directly here, right underneath you. The money is spread, and before it makes it to you, does a lot of good, and therefore inflation is going to be less. So this Marshall Plan of tourism helps in inflation as well. Regarding war and paranoia, most of wars in the world takes place because there is a paranoia. One is scared of the other, and one attacks the other before they think the other is going to attack them. It's all, you can say the Japanese attacked, the United States in World War II because they were worried that the United States is going to attack them, because, the whole idea that, obviously pink skin driven, the white people, pink skin driven United States obviously is never going to be an ally of the Japanese against the British white people. It's just not going to happen. So the United States is never going to be an ally of China against the British. It's just not going to happen, because there are bonds. So there are racial bonds. So we know that this is a pre-existing condition. What we can do is reduce the paranoia, because paranoia leads to war. Paranoia happens because you don't know the other side. You're worried that they may attack you before you get a chance to attack them, so you attack them first, and we have war. And a lot of people have a lot of nuclear weapons these days, so and any of these can make life very difficult on Earth. We all know it. So what happens is, basically, you want to, in order to put it simply, if we want to reach Star Trek and not annihilate ourselves, like a bunch of Klingons, if we want to reach Star Trek status, we have to avoid wars. And the way you avoid wars is you reduce paranoia. The way you reduce paranoia is you contact your opponent more. You go to their house more. You spend time with them more. You invite them to your house more. The more you contact with people, the lower your paranoia becomes. From animosity to friendship is just how much you have contact with people. And a lot of these animosities are literally is because of lack of contact. people, lack of contact. For example, I can say Mr. Trump, love the man, but I think one of his main issues was paranoia, and the paranoia came from his lack of contact with, other places in the world. In the critical age of life that is still having contact with different perspectives does affect people's personalities. I mean, if a 70-year-old, a 60-year-old, a 50-year-old comes in contact with a very different culture, that culture is not going to affect his or her personality to such an extent than if an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old has contact with that culture. That contact is going to have more profound effect in the personality that is built of that person. So, for example, I'm thinking if George W. Bush, for example, these people that we all know, the reason I'm mentioning these guys is these guys that we all know, more or less, they're public person. At least we know they're public person. So I'm thinking if Mr. Bush had gone through this program of spending 3 years outside of English-speaking world, anywhere outside of English-speaking world, he would have a better appreciation for the other, even if he has spent his time in, let's say, Panama or Ecuador or Angola, wherever he has spent his 3 years. Then after that, I don't think George W. Bush would have the personality that he had, or thought the way he thinks, or none. I'm thinking that the top echelon of United States politics that I see, if any of these women and gentlemen had gone through this program of 3 years of overseas at the age of 19, 20, and 21, they would have been a very different personalities, much deeper understanding, because at such early age they have experienced another perspective of life, and that is a good thing. You want people with who are able to have multiple perspective on the same issue, have multiple, having a wider vision. When you experience a different culture at a very young age, you get a wider view of the world, and wider view is always better. Wider view means less paranoia. Less paranoia means less war. Less aptitude for war all throughout the society. Less aptitude for violence. Less paranoia means less aptitude for violence, because you know more. You're less paranoid, you're not as aggressive. And that's good for all societies. And I can go over the benefit of Americans living in different places in the world, more of them. I can go over the benefits of it, but the benefits are very obvious. We will go over them. But I'm still following up on all these issues that I mentioned, that how tourism can help in that. I just covered the paranoia and war situation, paranoia that leads to war, more contact between Americans or people from industrial countries and the rest of the world will reduce the paranoia. You become better, you know the other side much better, so there is less paranoia. You might grow not to like the other side or grow to like the other side. It doesn't matter. It's just that you will get their perspective after 3 years. Education. There is an issue, as we said, education in the society, because education has been commercialized, and the commerce have decided to increase the prices for education that they're providing to citizens. Well, we say one of the best forms of education is traveling. There is nothing better Uncle Sam can do for his children than to sponsor their travel, especially when Uncle Sam can sponsor their travel because Uncle Sam prints the world currency. All Uncle Sam has to do is become a little far-sighted instead of short-sighted, becomes a little far-sighted, and Uncle Sam would recognize that in order to keep this hamster wheel turning, Uncle Sam needs to throw the money a little farther out. You see what I'm saying? Be generous with it, but a little farther out, because too much generosity in within your reach, too much generosity will cause inflation. We covered this. So education, first of all, your citizens traveling, education by itself in every sense, economic education, social education. There is 100% chance of your citizen coming back knowing now a second language very well. After 3 years, I don't care, anybody will become at least a good speaker of the language. After 3 years contact with any culture, the person will become a good speaker of the language. So, and that helps. I mean, you can just ask CIA if they need any translators at any given time, and if there is a pool of people speaking that language is a large pool, then the CIA and organizations like CIA have a better pool to choose from, bigger pool to choose from of people in their society that speaks that language, that knows that culture. So here's the thing. So again, this education is very important. Education that traveling teaches, education from, they can actually, your citizens can take that money and go and to universities in those lands, because their education is cheaper, and because the transaction rate between dollars and the local currency is very favorable. They probably can get a very good education. I'm thinking, going to university in Hungary would be, doable, very doable. Going to becoming a medical doctor in Hungary would be, within 3, 4, 5 years. That is the medical school. Within that budget of $3,000 a month, I think it's very, very well affordable for young Americans to do if they want to go that route. They can get educated, or they can just be a tourist for 3 years. It's up to them. But it will help in their education, indirectly and directly, if they decide to study abroad. The issue with media misinformation and lack of trust in media in general, because they believe that media is misinforming. Well, what better way than these people going and being at the location personally, and the historical, and after returning, they will have some friends over there, they will keep in touch, they probably follow the news, because after 3 years they somewhat identify with that location. So there is, and then they have friends back home in America. They can explain to their friends about the situation if they're interested. So, and then the media, hopefully, when they report the truth, people, agree with it. Those who in the society that are local speaker of the local language and the follower of the local news, they can tell others that yes, these are truth, or they're not. But the point is this, that there won't be much emphasis on media misinformation or lack of trust of media, because you have local sources there. Americans who are living in Kazakhstan, or living in Turkey, or living in Egypt, and news programs have a bigger pool of Americans who are living there to choose from to get their reports from. News programs like NPR, right now they may have like 10 people that can report from Cairo. With such a, this tourism Marshall Plan, they will have thousands of Americans to report from, to choose from, to report, get a report from Cairo, a daily report from Cairo, or from Namibia, or from Uganda, or from South Africa, or from Angola. You see what I'm saying? And motivation. The last one, the lack of motivation that I've noticed. This is it. I mean, there is nothing more motivating than, seeing the harsh realities of countries that are not industrial and do not have as much resources. There is nothing much more motivating than seeing that and then returning to a place that, if you look for it, will give you a lot of opportunities. So there is no more motivation, better motivation than that. Now, if these people come back and actually decide to do a kind of become entrepreneurs and do a business between their original land and the new land, even better. You have more Americans doing cross-border business between America and Angola, and cross-border business between America and Uganda, because the guy just spent 3 years there. And after the 3 years was up, he started, living there on his own money, and then traveling back and forth and setting up a business between Uganda and, Sweden, Uganda and Canada, Uganda and US, Uganda and Spain. This whole idea of, incentivizing the citizens from industrial countries, because industrial countries are the ones that can afford it. I mean, you want. If the British don't want so many immigrants into the British island, well, when you go and start a fire in the Middle East, instead of sending tourists to Iraq, the British decided to send soldiers to Iraq. Well, the soldiers go over there, bring hell, fire from the sky, the locals run away. Come to your land. What do you expect? Well, the better solution is not soldiers. The better solution is tourists. You send tourists to Iraq when you have problem with Saddam. You send him more tourists. Put a little more money in the pockets of the people on the ground, eating and living and having services done, and then it would make even the leader of the local shithole more calm, because he sees, hey, there are Americans here living. We have no problem in America. We have no problem with these guys. We have no problem with those guys. If you have the citizens of the other guy living in your country, you're not worried about the other country. I mean, I have a feeling if, there was 20,000 Americans living in China, or 20,000 Americans living in Pakistan at any given time, Pakistan wouldn't even want nuclear weapons. Would give up their nuclear weapons, because don't look at it in terms of Pakistan and Americans. Look at it in terms of Pakistan and India. If there is at any given time 100,000 Indians are incentivized to live in Pakistan and 100,000 Pakistanis are incentivized to live in India, then they don't have a conflict. It's sort of as simple as that. But since they're followers, so therefore I'm talking to mostly industrial countries that can afford it, and they are leaders in innovative ways. Eventually, the Pakistanis and the Indians will follow. But now is the time that for the industrial countries to be innovators in this way, to spread their wealth, you know, in different corners, along with their citizens, spend the wealth in different shitholes of the planet, with the knowledge that that money is eventually going to come back to Coca-Cola's pocket, eventually. But on its way back, it will do a lot of good, and the citizens are going to be, you know, it helps in every way. It helps the citizens of these industrial countries in every way, from their social cohesiveness, elimination of inflation of money, bringing down the paranoia and the war-like mentality that people carry in their subconscious. Better education, second language is the first thing they will learn, and then they're getting a different perspective in life, come to know of different perspectives in life. There's going to be more, you know, media trust to the media, because now even the media has a bigger pool of people to choose from all around the planet. And motivation, all of this, I think, is just going to be very helpful in motivating the society into working together better, to keeping the order that they have, instead of, you know, destroying the order because they feel left out. I mean, imagine, Mr. Biden, forgive me, sir, this is taking a little longer than I thought. Imagine Billy Bob from Mississippi, from the swamps of Mississippi. Imagine Billy Bob is just finished high school, whatever education that, you know, state of Mississippi had decided was enough, and is right out of high school. Now this program is on, and Billy Bob wants to sign up, because Billy Bob thinks getting paid $3,000 a month is good. I go live wherever. Imagine Billy Bob ending up in Mongolia for 3 years. Billy Bob from, you know, Mississippi, backwoods of Mississippi, spending 3 years in Mongolia, or spending 3 years in Turkey, or spending 3 years in, you know, Syria, spending 3 years in Algeria, Morocco. This Billy Bob spending 3 years as a citizen tourist, exactly based on citizen soldier, Billy Bob has become a citizen tourist. This would be life-changing for Billy Bob. Billy Bob probably would have been, you know, Billy Bob, like his grandfather, Billy Bob. Not much prospects, not much perspective, let's put it this way, going the way of his grandfather would make Billy Bob less productive for his society, less positive for his society around him, than the Billy Bob that you support for 3 years to go spend in Morocco. That Billy Bob that returns from Morocco to Mississippi, that's going to be Mr. William to you. So it's worth it. I can assure you, Mr. Biden, if any of the leaders of industrial world, including yourself, if anybody acts upon this, you will start a process in which you will have 1,000 years of peace on earth, and with very motivated societies, very, very understanding, very cohesive societies. You can have no doubt about that. No doubt. So again, this was Billy Bob from Mississippi. Uh, if let's say a sister from Harlem ends up going to, or a sister from Virginia, from very humble, urban area of Harlem, ends up in China for 3 years because Uncle Sam is incentivizing the matter with giving them universal basic income for 3 years. That sister, the lessons that she will learn in China, the lessons that she will learn in India, the lessons that she will learn in Jamaica, the lessons that she will learn in Uganda, the lessons that she may learn in Chile, that girl from that black sister from very humble surroundings in Harlem, those lessons that she learns in these 3 years in those countries where she may end up, their value in her path in the society back home, when she returns home, the value that has is going to be immeasurable. I mean, I can assure you, if you start this program tomorrow, the first wave of these folks who come back home, the first waves that come back home, it won't be the same society again. It will not. It would be very different. It would be much more lively, cohesive, dare I say sympathetic, empathetic, hardworking, grateful. This society not everybody has to go. Those who volunteer. But the effect that these sprinkle of these people who come back, the sprinkle will have on the rest of the society, the effects are going to be enormous. If after a decade or so, 1 in 10 of your people have spent time for 3 years in these humble backwoods of the planet Earth, with different amenities, with different environments, with different conditions, with different, economic status. After spending 3 years in there, from Billy Bob of Mississippi to Ashanti of Harlem, they're not going to be the same people. They're going to be much more positive members of your society than you can imagine. That was the base of my talk. Now, the few things that I like to mention, honorable mentions, is that up to this point, not only Mr. Biden, up to this point, not only traveling for Americans overseas into these shitholes, not only it hasn't been incentivized, not only Uncle Sam has never paid people to live overseas as tourists, but also Uncle Sam has, through law, is penalizing a lot of Americans, all Americans, from living overseas by double taxing them, by expecting the Americans not only to pay their local tax, but also pay Uncle Sam's tax on their income. That's penalized. That's penalizing people for double taxation. You're penalizing people. by threatening them to double tax them. It's sort of like, we don't care how much the local government over there in that shed hole that you're working, we don't care how much the local government takes off your taxes as income tax, we're going to take our share. Who wants to, pay double taxes? So it's basically desensitizing or penalizing people, for Americans, for working overseas or having any kind of life overseas, because now they have to pay two taxes. Again, problem. I mean, once you realize that it's a good idea for Americans to live overseas for a time, for a period, once you realize that is actually a good plan, then you realize that this double taxation doesn't make sense. Not only it would make sense that after the 3 years is up and the American is found a work over there or job over there in those countries, American Uncle Sam might actually say, okay, we actually compensate whatever taxes you're paying locally. That's another incentive that Uncle Sam can give to Americans to actually, start a business over there so they can do back and forth business. Become an asset for America overseas by having a business, being American and having a business or working for a business overseas. That's an asset. That's an asset. The more you spread, but you don't have to spread via military. But if you have the civilian spread, they take knowledge with them and they bring you knowledge. They take knowledge, they give knowledge, and they bring knowledge. What's wrong with that? Through tourism, through working, through commerce, not through military. So hopefully double taxation will be eliminated. Uncle Sam, again, as I said, can refund their citizens their whatever taxes they're paying to the local government. Uncle Sam can say, we cover that tax. We will refund whatever tax you pay, from sales tax to income tax that the local governments in those shithole might take. Uncle Sam can compensate fully. That's an incentive for Americans to live overseas. As far as the Build Back Better, sir, here's the thing: the prices are up, inflation is high, the corporations have pushed their prices up. So Build Back Better would, puts a lot of money as profits into the pockets of a few corporations, because they're charging you an arm and a leg because of the inflation situation, and they see that they can make a lot of money by through the Build Back Better program. I think first build back better the society first, and by building back better the society means, do you remember how the World War II veteran, how grateful they were? War had something to do with it, but going over there, even in Europe, gives a better perspective to those who return. Better perspective. Now it doesn't have to be war. War is not necessary when you can bring back the mentality of the veterans of World War II to America through these tourists. These tourists will have 90%, their personalities will become 90% like those personalities who returned back to America from World War II because of that adventure that they had overseas. You can bring that back through this program with tourists, which is, much better for the environment. So I would say they put the Build Back Better money towards this program, or any money from anywhere. You can put up some of the defense money into this program, because this program, here's the thing, there's an old saying, they say the bigger you make your State Department, the smaller you can make your army. The bigger you can make your State Department budget, the smaller you can for sure make your military budget because your State Department is so big. When I say State Department is big, is literally processing these many people is going to take more people. So of course, State Department has to be bigger. If the U.S. Embassy in Congo can process 100 people, 1,000 people a month, 100 people a day. If you have suddenly the number of Americans in Uganda becomes 10 times more than it is what is now, 100 times more it is what is now, the staff that needs to process these, not process, be involved with these people, provide services for them, the staff of the US Embassy obviously has to go up. And while on that subject, Mr. Biden, here's the thing: outside of the United States, American embassies everywhere we noticed, it looks really scary from the outside. They have built these fortresses, Fort Knox, which you would think it looks like a jail from the outside because they have these small windows. We understand it's a matter of security and safety, but it looks like prisons. It looks like you don't want to go in there. I was scared of U.S. Embassy outside of the United States. I just don't want to go near the building because when you look at it, it looks scary. It looks like if you go in, you're not going to come out. It's a cube, very safe, very secure, but I mean, obviously when you have so many, tourists, around the planet, obviously has to be a little more access, a little more openness, a little more villas than cubes would mean. Yeah, there is some risk in there. Yeah, of course, risk and safety is going to be less safe than a safe, but you don't want to live in a safe. You see what I mean? You want some windows and some balconies and some openness. Living in a safe, who wants to live in a safe? Those buildings that are built, the U.S. embassies outside of the United States, that are built that looks like a block, that there is no openness because safety is most important matter, safety and security. But I mean, then let's just say the locals don't get a good impression of locals of those shithole. Don't get a good impression. Don't we, by sending them tourists, we're trying to go the opposite way and say, we're here. I'm here to buy lunch from you. I'm here to buy fruits from you. I'm going to be your neighbor for the next 3 years. I'm open. Yes, here's the thing, a lot of people may turn around Mr. Biden and say there's going to be some casualties and, the locals might, not be happy with America, so they might take it out on Americans. Yes, there's going to be some of that. But first, to those people who raise such concern, I would say casualties of tourism is always hundreds and hundreds of times less than casualties of war. There's going to be some casualties, but is it comparable to 50,000 casualties of just Uncle Sam's children in Korean War? 50,000 is like, or was it the Vietnam War? 50,000 casualties. Anyway, tourism, casualties of tourism, which is much more acceptable. The numbers, the quantities are much more acceptable than casualties of war. It's not even comparable. And I can assure you that you get a much better If the idea is to influence them, ideas influence their religion, the ideas influence their perspective in life. If the ideas influence them, their politics, if the idea is to, introduce them to democracy or introduce them to idea of freedom or whatever the objective is, I can assure you tourists do a much better job of it than soldiers do. If the idea is what we are saying is right and we want to spread this right, the best way to spread what we believe in, which we think we believe in, we are right and they're wrong. Okay, you're right. Okay, the best way to spread this right, this what you believe in, is through tourism, through having a beer with the guy, sitting down and talking. An American in Angola, American woman or American man, a sister in Angola, sitting down having a beer with her Angolan friends who have been with for the past 2.5 years. She can have a constitution in her pocket, US Constitution, and say, yeah, this is about right. Human beings should have these kind of rights and this and this and that. You see, if the idea is spreading what you believe in, you think you have the right way, you found the right way to spread it, that idea will spread with tourists a lot better than it will spread with soldiers. A lot faster, a lot better, a lot cheaper, a lot more humane. You don't have to explode the right idea above their head or in their front yard. You have a beer with them and talk about democracy. There is also the effect of these youngsters that they go. I'm sure after a short while their parents will visit them if they're in a financial condition to do so. Many will not be, so it would be a 3-year straight stunt for those whose family cannot afford, and they may not be able to afford, but $3,000 a month, I'm sure once every 6 months these people can afford to visit back with their family in the United States. So the point is this: a lot of times the families of these people will go to those countries and meet them there. And that's, again, you started something, you incentivize one person, one youngster of age 19 to go over there and live in Chad. And before you know it, after a year or so, his family goes and visits them and stays in Chad for 3 months, for a month, for 2 months, for 2 weeks. And that will, more enlighten the family with another place beside Baltimore, beside Jacksonville. The effect that this would have on the society, the good effect that this would have on the society, is immeasurable. And just remember this, that in this case, the rich kids will not be running away from it. You see, there was, when you have the military draft, the poor kids end up going and the rich kids end up dodging the draft. And this doesn't even have to be a draft. You don't have to draft people for this. You're paying them as much as you're paying a soldier, and it's voluntary. So in this case, I think some of the rich kids might actually volunteer to join, to go spend time in a non-English speaking country. I think you have many volunteers. And from the poor classes, of course, you end up with a lot of poor people, kids of 19, 20, and 21 who actually go because they haven't found their way in life. Here's a chance to learn a little more about the environment around them, and here's Uncle Sam paying Joe to go and live in Chad for 3 years, $3,000 a month. And the reality is this: you don't even need to, give a different pay to different individuals. You say Uncle Sam can say, we give you $3,000 a month. Now you can go with this $3,000 a month. You can go live in London, or I'm sorry, non-English speaking country. You can live in Paris with this $3,000, and you're going to have a very humble life. Or you can go and live in Poland with this $3,000, and you can live in luxury, just because of the difference in the prices. So what happens is you will find a lot more people volunteering to go to shadier countries, because their money is going to, that $3,000 is going to help them live a better life. You can live with $3,000. You can live like a king in Chad, but you can live a humble life in Paris. You choose. So in fact, without even planning for it, you're going to have a lot of volunteers for a lot of shitty places, which is a good thing. I mean, they come back after 3 years extremely grateful for what they have back home. And meanwhile, Uncle Sam has helped that really shitty shithole to raise. Directly putting money in those, poor people's pocket, which eventually comes back to Coca-Cola and Brad Pitt. Back to the concern about safety, again, numbers are going to be not even comparable with numbers that may arise, casualties that may arise out of war. That's one thing. And two, the locals, they're not stupid. Some places they're crazy, but they're not stupid. Once they see that the livelihood of their people is raising, the livelihood is getting better because of this money that these Americans are spending at our food stalls, at our chai stalls, at our tea stalls, at our coffee stores, the people on the ground, without involvement from any of the authorities, the people on the ground are going to be very welcoming to American citizens. And the people on the ground right now, they're very welcoming to American citizens. And this bullshit that the media has propagated, that everybody in the world, not everybody, but a lot of people hate Americans. They don't. Nobody hates Americans. We love Americans. Most people in the world love Americans. As long as they don't, get a bayonet up their ass, they love Americans. And this Marshall Plan of tourism is going to make them love Americans even more. Who hates people who come and put money in your pocket for food and for services and for traveling, for education? Americans can start going to education in Chad. He can become a doctor in Chad with $3,000 a month. I can assure you. And so, again, sir, this of course is not going to be beneficial. This idea of Marshall Plan of tourism is not going to be beneficial in the short term. Is not going to be beneficial to many U.S. corporations. Not going to be beneficial in the short term. But as I said, because all the money again comes back with regards to Coca-Cola and Brad Pitt and KFC and McDonald's and all these. And even less directly, those countries spend money in other countries which spend money with Uncle Sam. So all this money is gonna come back to US corporations. It's just going to take a little longer. So a lot of these corporations, a lot of these conservative people might come out and say, no, we don't want to spend money on those motherfucking foreigners. Yes, I understand. But these guys should understand that this money is, first of all, is being spent over there from Uncle Sam's pocket. But first of all, it's going to find its way back to US corporations pretty soon, eventually, you can say. And it's going to prevent other places from collapsing, especially after this pandemic with the system. Nobody is allowed to print dollars except Uncle Sam. And a lot of these places are running out of dollars to spend. So through this Marshall Plan of tourism, you're sending dollars to those places so they don't collapse, because when everybody collapses, it's a house of cards. My house is going to collapse too. So the idea is to prevent collapsing, start of the collapse. So you have to send money out, but this is the money well spent. Not only stabilizes every corner of the world and therefore stabilizing Uncle Sam, but also this money is spent well because the citizens that are produced after only 3 years of this tour, these citizens are going to be much more positive for the society that they come back to. This, I'm talking now to all industrial countries, because they have to start this business, this Marshall Plan of tourism, because they are the ones that, for now, they are the only ones that can afford it. And Uncle Sam must be the first one, because Uncle Sam is the one that can really afford it because of that, being the reserve currency and all that. My conservative friends, I know the liberals are the progressives and the liberals, even the regular Democrats, I think, are on board, can be on board on this plan. That a little pushback may come from the deeply conservatives, but then for the religious one, you can say that the citizens are allowed to propagate their own religion wherever they go. And what would be better for example, the Mormon Church, if Uncle Sam is paying for the youngsters of the Mormon Church to spend time in Chad and propagate their religion, or the Baptists or the evangelicals, but then you have to understand, once you allow it to happen, then American Muslims may also, who go abroad, may also try to spread their message. So once you leave it up to people to do what they want, this is going to happen. So if everybody's happy with it, that people can not only go and spread their form of government, democracy, ideas about democracy and freedom, but also if they have a religion, they choose to advertise their religion, fine. But the point is my conservative friends, again, you have a chance, your people have a chance to propagate the religion if you're of the religious conservative. My wealthy conservative friends, you will have a very cooperative, cohesive society as you want once people return from these 3-year stints, because as a rich conservative, you want a cohesive society, because you don't want your stores to be burned down. Because you don't want your stores to be burned down and you want a cohesive society, there is nothing better can produce humble, peaceful citizens than if these citizens spend some time in shed holes, get paid for it, and live over there, but spend the time over there and really taste the shit in the shed hole. So these citizens will come back very humble, very productive, because they have experienced shed hole. And this is for my rich conservative friends. You will have better society and more peaceful society, more productive society. So in general, this is a win-win-win for both the progressive, the liberals, the conservatives, the religious conservatives, the wealthy conservatives. Everybody should be on board with this. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Biden. I love Uncle Sam.